In this dumpster fire that is this administration, it's a full-time job to keep apprised of the latest scandals and abuses of power. You take your eyes off Twitter for 5 minutes and you're already hours behind in the news. Well, hopefully, that's where I come in, right? I want to turn your attention to something that you may have missed because it came and then it went. In any other administration, this story would be dominating the news cycle. But because we have a Tony Soprano wannabe at the helm, it's difficult to prioritize scandals in order of most serious to least. But this is big. And I rarely say share this video or like and comment below, but this is different. I'm asking you to share this with your social media network. Each and every one of us has an obligation to ensure this story doesn't disappear like any one of hundreds of other Trump scandal stories. The New York Times did a deep dive into the Trump family finances and uncovered deeply rooted cross-generational tax fraud schemes, illuminating the ways in which Donald Trump's family manipulated and cheated their way to the top. But that's not all. We also get a glimpse into how much of a liar Donald Trump really is. Self-made billionaire, huh? A small loan of $1 million. I don't think so. The New York Times reporting conveys an image of young Donnie running to Daddy's piggy bank whenever things got tough and getting himself into trouble once the security blanket was gone. So let's get into the details a little bit. Donald Trump's father, Fred Christ Trump, yeah, that's his middle name, Christ, was a super rich builder and landowner in New York City. He owned a lot of properties. He also had 5 kids, one of whom is Marianne Trump, who is Donald's older sister, and it is through her that the New York Times was able to break through the wall of family silence on this vast defrauding of the American government and its people. You see, Marianne is a former federal judge who was required to make her financial disclosures public as part of her job. And it is through her mandatory disclosures that the New York Times discovered all these trust funds and properties from Fred Trump that were funneling money to Mary Trump. So they thought, this gives us a glimpse of what is possibly going on with Donald.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. It is my privilege to appear before you.
Donald Trump's sister, Marianne Barry Trump, was a federal judge for a number of years. Like all federal judges, each year that she was a judge, she had to file a financial disclosure form that lists like every asset that she controls. So I took those 2,200 pages of financial disclosure forms she filed and then made this chart. She listed all the trust funds by name. She named the actual business entities that she was getting revenue from. Those were her father's businesses. So that was a great aid to us. All the siblings got that same amount.
So what we saw for her was a good proxy for Donald Trump.
But it's clear he got more than $200 million from his father just in one swoop, and then millions of dollars every year, it looks like, for decades prior to that.
The difficulty was tracking it down. Luckily, the investigative reporters, they kept tracking the sources and found other financial documents that led them to a company, All County Building Supply and Maintenance, where the tax fraud scheme was finally discovered. According to the New York Times, Donald Trump and his siblings set up this sham corporation called All County Building Supply and Maintenance. They used it to disguise millions of dollars in gifts from their parents. Records indicate that Mr. Trump helped his father take improper tax deductions worth millions more, and that he also helped formulate a strategy to undervalue his parents' real estate holdings by hundreds of millions of dollars on tax returns, sharply reducing the tax bill when those properties were transferred to him and his siblings. The Times also found that Fred Trump transferred well over $1 billion in wealth to his kids, which would have produced a tax bill of at least $550 million under the then 55% tax rate imposed on gifts and inheritances. The Trumps paid a total, are you ready? The Trumps paid a total of $52.2 million, or about 5%, tax records show. This is disgusting. This is fraud. This is effectively stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from the government. This is impeachable. And when asked about this reporting, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said this.
The New York Times reported yesterday that the president had engaged in outright tax fraud throughout the 90s with suspect tax schemes and basically getting more money from his parents than he said, using thousands of documents. You rebutted the story. Can you explain what is inaccurate about that story, if there's anything that is actually inaccurate about it?
It's a totally false attack based on an old recycled news story. I'm not going to sit and go through every single line of a very boring 14,000 word story.
Well, besides the fact that this is exactly the kind of swampy behavior that Sarah Sanders and Trump supporters all over are always running their mouths about weeding out of the government, it's most certainly not an old recycled news story. This is fresh, new reporting on details previously unknown to the American people. Also, it's not a long and boring story. The liars and frauds in the White House want desperately to convince people not to pay attention because it's boring. And while financial crimes are dry and sometimes tough to fully understand, they are super, super important. Especially when they involve the President of the United States of America being party to a conspiracy to defraud the United States government out of hundreds of millions of dollars. And lastly, this proves that Donald Trump is by no stretch a self-made man. He is like every other sniveling rich kid who can't do anything without scamming others and relying on his daddy. So again, let's keep this story out there. Don't let it die. Share this video, like this video, and let's talk about it in the comments.